Good evening and welcome to Your Neighbor Next Door, highlighting the extraordinary stories of people all around us. Tonight we introduce you to Alvin Elsdon, who served during World War II and was an eyewitness to the Nuremberg trials. Let's hear his story in his own words.
I graduated from high school in 1940. The war was going on, and immediately we were classified 1A to 4F. I was classified 1A, so I knew that it was imminent, my being drafted. I did not want to go into the infantry. I wanted to go into the Air Force. I had already gotten my pilot's license. I was sent to aircraft mechanic school in Goldsboro, North Carolina. It was while I was there that my wife came down. We were married by a chaplain in the Baptist Church of Goldsboro, North Carolina. The only people in the church were GIs from my barracks, and two elderly people that were members of the church. I was at the station at the Douglas Aircraft factory where the B-17s were built. And what we would do is we would go with a plane and from the, in shipbuilding they call it the laying of the keel. Well, building an airplane, they do the same thing. They start with the frame. And they build the frame of an airplane and they go through the plant from one end to the other, and when it comes out, it's a finished B-17. The plant was filled with women. Those airplanes were built by women. Housewives, mothers, daughters, women that were working, and most of them, their husbands were in the service. That's the way it was during the Second World War. And we had a great spirit of camaraderie, and we worked together along with it. But we just learned the airplane by watching it being built. The flight engineer has a position right between the pilot and the co-pilot. And our job is to watch all those gauges and instruments. The pilot does not watch the gauges and instruments. We watch the fluid, the aircraft fluids, the hydraulic pressure. We watch the gas gauges. The B-17 had 4 tanks on it. If you got too much gas on one side, the pilot would be hanging on the wheel holding it up because it was heavy. That side was heavy. We would get a new airplane and we would get a pilot, a co-pilot, a navigator, a bombardier, the guy that let the bombs go, the gunners, the radio operator. We would get the whole crew together. And they had to work together. We were told that if we got a sense that there were 2 guys on that crew that did not work, that didn't hit it off, we were to immediately give them the name of one, recommend them to be taken off, and somebody else would, and they were replaced. So when we said that they were ready to go, they went, and then they went overseas. So we sent the crew, airplane all manned with the crew overseas. After the war, the United States government were faced with the monumental task of returning those millions of guys back that they had brought over a little at a time. They were all there hanging around waiting to go back home. That was a big job. They had a rating system, and you were given so many points. So many points for years in service, so many points of months in combat, and all these points added up. It was a terrific system. But I was low on points because I didn't have any combat time. So I was stuck, I say. I wasn't stuck really because that gave me the opportunity to work as a chaplain's assistant because there was no more flying to do, you know. I had a lot of time on my hands. And they had opportunity to take these trips. One of them was, I saw it posted on the bulletin board, attend the Nuremberg trials. So I signed up for it, and I went on the bus with a whole bunch of guys. I remember we went in up the stairs, and we came out in a balcony. And we sat in the balcony and looked down at these German officers sitting there in a row. They were on one end of the room, and it was kind of a platform. They were raised up, a couple of steps up. And they sat, and there was a table in front of them. And they sat in back of the table, and in back of each one of them, there was an American MP with a gun on, and each one of them had his own guard. And they never left him. They stayed with him all the time. The thing that impressed me, I never forget it. I looked at these guys, and some of them German officers had very, very fancy uniforms, beautiful material. They sat there with those uniforms. They had all the insignia pulled off of them. Even the brass buttons were pulled off of their uniform. And to me, it was the most humiliating thing I ever saw. They were humiliated that way. Each one of those prisoners had their own German lawyer. The trials were very, very fair. And on the other end of the room, there was a bunch of American officers that were the judicial bench. And they would ask them questions. Before they answered a question, their German officers would interpret the question in German to them. And they would talk back and forth in German. And the lawyer would answer for them. Some of these German officers on trial spoke English better than me. Very, very good English. But they still went through the German lawyers to speak. They wouldn't speak. Goering and Himmler and they committed suicide. Of course, Hitler committed suicide. Another trip that I took was Buchenwald. Yeah, we went there and we went in a bus. It was a trip that it was on the bulletin board. So I've taken these trips. It's like the old timer take trips, you know. We had these trips and had nothing to do. I signed up for a trip and I went on the bus, and there must be, I think there are probably 20, 25 guys on the bus, and they're all drinking beer and they're all having a grand time, you know. So by the time we got to Buchenwald and got out of the bus, they were feeling pretty good, you know. We walked into this room, and sometimes when I think about it, I get emotional, even now. We walked into this room, and the first thing they greeted us was a pile of eyeglasses, a pile of them. Well, what they did was, they took their eyeglasses off them before they marched them into the gas chambers. And they took the gold out of their teeth. They stripped them of anything that they felt was worth anything. And we walked in there, and there was a young whack who was going to be our guide. And she started to talk to us about what the Germans did to Jewish people. And I'll tell you, Casey, it was like a church, absolutely dead silence. I looked around, I saw tears running down cheeks of the big husky GIs, you know. They were just touched that one human being could do such terrible things to another human being. So they had pictures there of the gas chambers. They had pictures there. They took us out in the back and they showed us a big long grave where they dumped them in and put the bulldozer and put the dirt on top of their bodies. They had pictures there of it. That was one of the most unhappy experiences of my life that day. And that. I had a different feeling for Jewish people after that. And then to come home and have somebody tell me that the Holocaust was a hoax. It never happened. I know it happened because I saw it. Our oldest son, Bob, he was born while I was, he was actually born when I was overseas. It's interesting that when I came back, I had to get introduced to my son. He didn't know who I was. I was standing out in the kitchen the day I came back from the service, and I heard him say to his mother, "Who's that man out in the kitchen?" She said, "That's your daddy."